Space is for everybody. It's not just a few people in science or maths, or for a selected group of astronauts. That's our new frontier out there, and it's everybody's business to know about space.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind. Your hosts here in London, Matthew Russell and Jamie Franklin.
Oh, Matt, that's really lovely.
It is beautiful, particularly when you consider who the person was that said it.
Tell me.
So that was Christa McAuliffe.
Oh.
It's a brilliant quote. And it encompasses everything. But of course, and for those who don't know who Christa McAuliffe is, she was on the Space Shuttle Challenger. Unfortunately, yeah, she was a mission specialist, the first civilian mission specialist, a teacher. And she sat next to our space legend of the week.
Here we go. It's only GBJ.
The GBJster, Gregory Bruce Jarvis, who was born on this very day in 1944, August the 24th. So,
Matt, he was serving as a payload specialist?
He was a payload specialist from Hughes Aircraft. So he was a brilliant engineer. He got an electrical engineering degree and master's, worked at Hughes, had designed the F1, F2, F3 spacecraft and was part of the engineering team, a manager. Everyone loved him at work as well. Apparently he's one of those managers that had his arm around engineers, encouraging them all the time, worked 16 hours a day.
Blimey.
Everyone got fed up with his sweaty clothes all lying around the office because he was a very, very keen cyclist. Him and his wife used to cycle 80, 90 kilometers a day through the Rocky Mountains and things like that. So, yeah, they were very, very keen sports people, which is one of the reasons when it came to people being picked for mission specialists for this shuttle flights, that he was the one that got chosen. He's very, 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 very hardworking. According to his friends, he wasn't a genius, but he was someone who worked so hard that he became a genius, that kind of thing.
Well, that's even better.
Yeah. So he wasn't even scheduled for the Challenger space shuttle flight. He was bumped off by Senator Jake Garn on a previous flight, and then bumped off again by Florida Congressman Bill Nelson before taking his place on the Space Shuttle Challenger that ended in, of course, one of the worst disasters.
Awful. Imagine being one of those politicians. That's going to sit heavy with you.
Yeah, I mean, or people that were on that flight before, or the people on the next flight. It really is. It's super tragic. But he was someone that was very, very aware of the risks. He was an engineer, and apparently, one of the reasons why I chose the Christa quote is because he was really, really kind to her and really nice to her throughout the entire process. And one of the things that almost made me cry when I was reading this story was that his friends said he was almost certainly holding her hand during the shuttle disaster. So it's like, oh no, because he was sat next to her. And it's like, yeah. So happy birthday, Greg, wherever you are in the universe.
Happy birthday. And, Matt, it's people like that mean that, rocketry and space exploration can go further. So it's all because of them.
Yeah, it's such a pity, isn't it? They all thought that the shuttle had become a kind of routine thing.
Onto one of our favourite, people, Matt.
Yeah.
If I can tell by the literally tens of tweets that we've had about Space Word of the Week, it's the favourite feature.
Yeah, we're going to do an easy one this week. We kind of we got bogged down in like words with long definitions for the last couple. But this one's easy. And do you know who told me about this one? I was walking through the street and I said, George, I haven't had time to write the podcast notes. Have you got a space word that I don't know? And you know what? He told me a space word I didn't know.
That doesn't surprise me. What did he give you?
He gave me lithobraking.
Come on.
Come on. No, I think the reason why he knew lithobraking is because I think the Kerbal Space peeps out there, they love a bit of lithobraking.
Good work, G. So,
Yes.
Matt, break it down for us.
What do you think the word lithos or lithos in Greek means?
I'll guess some kind of material. I don't know.
Yeah, like rock or stone.
Oh, yes. I'll take that.
So it's a rock or stone in Greek, lithos. So it's a kind of play on words. So aerobraking is obviously what ExoMars has been doing in the Martian atmosphere to sort of circularize its orbit. So it's a way of slowing down. Lithobraking is obviously slowing down using rock. So
now, how do you do that, may I ask?
So you basically just crash into the planet and use the crust of the planet, or the lithosphere of the planet, to slow yourself down.
Sounds painful.
Well, it's kind of sometimes used as a joke. So when a rocket has crashed into the surface, like Scapolarelli, for example, it did spectacular lithobraking.
Well, there you go.
But that has been done successfully. So the Soviets had their Luna 9 probe land on the moon using lithobraking. So you've just put loads and loads of padding around what you're landing. And of course, the most famously is the lithobraking technique used by Mars Pathfinder and Mars exploration rovers that were in those massive inflatable balls that sort of hit the planet and bounce around and slow down that way. So that is lithobraking.
Wouldn't it be frustrating if you just couldn't get the rover out of the inflatable ball? That would be annoying, wouldn't it?
I tell you what's even more frustrating than that is if you had a awesome English dude who looked like a farmer and he'd made an amazing spacecraft that did a bit of lithobraking on the Martian lithosphere, and everyone just assumed it had blown up and crashed. And then years later they were to discover, no, the lithobraking had worked fine, but the only thing that hadn't worked fine was the unfurling of one solar panel that covered the radio transmitter.
Oh, God.
And Beagle 2.
Oh, God, that's heartbreaking.
That is the most heartbreaking
Matt,
version of litho.
Why couldn't Curiosity go and find it and uncover it?
Yeah, that's true, actually. I always thought that. Why can't it just wheel over and just...
It's probably not that easy.
No. It's gutting, though, isn't it? I think...
Can we ask David Baker about that, please? Or Zoobs? or Papa Zoobs?
Beagle 2.
Poor old Beagle 2. So, Matt, what have we got going on?
Well, Jamie, you know that I've just come back from Germany.
I do.
You couldn't join me, could you? Because
I was
too busy with your boss.
Too busy.
Too busy with the boss, man. So, yeah, I just got back from Germany, Jamie, and it was very, very exciting. Of course, the launch didn't happen when I was over there because it was delayed a day, and I had to come back. But it was still fun. And like a lot of these things, when you visit a facility like that, it was ESOC in Darmstadt, which is the European Centre of Operations. It's not as busy as it would be if there was a launch. So actually we were able to go into the mission control part, which we wouldn't have been able to do if there had been a launch.
Nice.
And of course, we were there to be groupies or Earth groupies, # Earth groupies.
Yeah. Shout out.
Shout out to me main men and women in the Earth groupies where we were. And they were quite a cool bunch, actually. They were from absolutely everywhere. People from Germany, obviously, people from the Netherlands, people from Venezuela, people from India, people from London.
Oh, there you go, Matt. You're repping big time. Englishmen
on the Earth groupies.
Matt, I hope you didn't
section.
Let us down. You didn't get drunk and start singing football songs, did you?
I didn't. I kept myself to one beer.
Oh, okay.
But then I was having a brilliant dinner. I'll tell you about that in a second. But we were there to see Aeolus.
Yes.
Aeolus that I was really struggling with the pronunciation of last week. Yes. Do you want to hear a little bit about Aeolus?
Give me some facts.
Very exciting. So it's a satellite. It's kind of main part of the satellite was built. The satellite bit, the bit that flies around, was built in England, in Stevenage, by Airbus. And this other part, the really exciting part, the LiDAR, was built in France. And that's the exciting bit. That's the bit that does the work. So, so this satellite, it flies up in sun-synchronous dusk-dawn orbit.
Oh, I like that.
The dusk-dawn orbit means that it kind of rides a terminator between day and night and crosses the equator round about dawn and dusk.
And the reason why the Terminator
rides the Terminator.
I'm going to start a band called that.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? But it's really, the thing about that is that the solar panels can be in direct sunlight, so it's getting power, but it can also see the dark side of the Earth at that point, and it can use this brilliant piece of kit, this LiDAR that it's got on board, which is basically an ultraviolet laser, a laser that blasts laser light into the atmosphere. And then that laser light is reflected back and is measured by several instruments, the Aladdin instruments. And using the Doppler shift of the reflected light, it can work out how fast the wind speeds are.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. So
has this been done before?
No, this is the very first time that this has happened, and this is one of the really interesting parts of this mission is that this atmospheric laser Doppler instrument, the Aladdin, is extremely hard to make, and this has launched 15 years later than it should have done, mainly because of the technological difficulties of actually trying to build something like this. And they went to NASA. NASA couldn't help because they didn't have any experience in something like this. The main problem is this laser is so powerful that if there's any kind of contaminant anywhere near it, the laser itself starts to darken because it burns this contaminant onto itself. And it loses its efficiency. So when they first started testing this thing in a vacuum, because it's when it's in a vacuum, that's when it becomes a problem. And when they first started testing it, after sort of 7 minutes, it had lost 40% of its efficiency or something daft like that. So clearly that's not going to work. So they've been spending ages trying to sort it out. And the analogy that I came up with is, remember the overhead projectors you used to get at school?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know if someone touched the bulb, the bulb would get dark and the bulb would then crack because the dark fingerprint would darken off and ruin the whole thing. It's pretty much like that, essentially. You basically ruined the telescope with these kind of smudges and darkness that gets onto the thing. So how they've got round that is really interesting. So they flood the area with oxygen, so they're continually sort of cleaning it out and purging the area with oxygen. And therefore, if any contaminants are in there, because you've got this extra oxygen in there, they will burn off rather than sort of becoming this dark, horrible mess on the instrument.
I love that. Well, I can't wait to see what it can do.
Yeah, so it goes round.
Dr. Evil power.
Yeah, so it does 100 wind measurements every hour. So it can go in and just start measuring the wind all around the world. And of course, this is the first time this has ever been done. This could be a very, very exciting.
That's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting development. And the irony was it launched a day late because of wind conditions down in French Guiana. So if another Aeolus had been flying, they wouldn't have attempted a launch on that day because it possibly could have measured the winds to more accurate. Yeah, they would have had the info. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting spacecraft all in all.
I love that.
My favourite part of the whole day on Tuesday was I had a really good opportunity to speak to the mission scientist, a lady from Norway called Anne Grete Straum. And she was just fantastic, and she told me all about the instrument and how they use the oxygen, etc., etc. We had our meal together, and we were chatting about playing Bach on the piano, which is really good. She's a classical pianist as well as being a fantastic weather scientist, and it was really good to talk to her. Yeah, and
did you both tickle the ivories or?
No, there wasn't a piano there, or else we could have done a little duet, couldn't we?
You could have played her some Queen.
Yeah, I could have played her that Chris Squire track really badly, and you post it on Instagram just to make me feel bad.
Still one of my finest moments.
Yeah, thanks. But check it out. Even when you're the mission scientist, you're not allowed in mission control on the day of launch because it's so busy in there. But I've got a pretty good picture of that in the show notes for this week.
Nice.
So yeah, when I was at ESOC, we had a look at the Earth Observatory control. So that's where all the scientists sit around flying all the satellites like Sentinel, Swarm, Gotchi, and SMOS that are out there measuring all these different things and building these enormous data sets that help everyone look. I mean, Europe's become the leader in looking at the Earth and how it's changing, and so therefore it's vitally important when it comes to, global warming and things like that. We managed to look at the Astronomy Control Centre, where they look after XMM Newton and Gaia and Integral. And there was a brilliant little story there. There was one thing where, we reported on this quite recently when there was a ground detection of neutrinos, and then satellites were sort of told to go and have a quick look to see if they could find where it was from. An integral was sort of turned around and was able to find the gamma X-ray source of all this kind of thing. So I asked about that, and they said how on earth they coordinate it. And he did tell me the story, and it's roughly there's a kind of wire that goes out to everyone that sort of says this is an interesting event, and then the mission controllers sort of decide whether it's interesting enough, and then code down to these people sitting in the room and going, right, this is what we're doing today. We're doing these maneuvers to turn around Integral to have a look at this this source, this X-ray source, see if we can do it. And I said, well, how long does that process take? And he said, it took about 8 hours. And I said, that's amazingly quick. And he goes, well, no, he goes, not really, because 5 hours of it was wasted because they were not in communication with the satellites, as in it's going around a dark part of the Earth where none of their base stations are actually pointing at it. So it took them 5 hours before they were able to send the commands to it. So you could actually do it quicker than that. And I just thought that's incredible, isn't it?
That's nuts.
That how quickly the scientific community can sort of realize something interesting's going on, get the message out, and control it all. I just thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that's banging. Good work, team.
Yeah, and then we went to the flight dynamics room. And the flight dynamics room was really interesting. That's where they work out the maneuvers that these satellites have to do and tell the control rooms the commands that they have to send to the satellite. So they do things like work out... there's another room that we visited called the debris facility, and they tell... flight dynamics if there's a bit of space debris that they've got to avoid, and so they can raise the orbits of satellites to avoid those bits of space debris, and apparently they do that sort of once or twice a year for each satellite, but they've got 20 satellites, so it's actually quite a common maneuver to have to avoid space junk.
I loved the show we did on space junk.
Yeah. Do you know, actually, I'll tell you something that was interesting. I believe on that show, I said that if the Kessler syndrome got so bad, we wouldn't be able to launch. So I asked that question to the guy in the debris facility, and he said, no, that's not true. He said, yeah, you need to think of space debris as like radiation. It's your kind of exposure over a long time that puts you at risk. But when you're launching... they don't even look at space debris. All they're looking for is maybe like that you're not launching straight up into the International Space Station or something like that.
Got it.
But they don't look because of the launch sort of cone of where it's going to go isn't
Yeah.
particularly well defined. They couldn't look at whether you're going to hit any space debris, so they don't bother. He said it's just be so unlikely, even if there was a Kessler event. He was also laughing about the film Gravity. He says, even though it was a really good film to sort of raise awareness, the whole idea of a Kessler syndrome getting out of control in a matter of hours is ridiculous. He said it would, it takes centuries for it to really kind of happen and unfurl.
Mind-blowing.
I've got a brilliant interview. We've got a brilliant interview with Loren Grush.
Oh, this is going to be good because I've heard a little bit of it unedited. Matt, let's roll the tape.
Let's roll the tape. Écoutez. So I'm joined by Loren Grush, who a lot of you won't need introducing to. I'm sure you're very aware of what Loren does, but I'll allow Loren to tell us exactly what she does do for those of our listeners who aren't aware. Hello, Loren.
Hi, so nice to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Great. So a little bit about myself. I am the senior science reporter for The Verge, which is a tech and culture site, and I focus on space for them specifically. So I guess you could say I'm the senior space reporter. Just some background on how I got here. I grew up in Houston, Texas with two parents who worked for NASA Johnson Space Center. And so I was kind of surrounded by space growing up. As I grew older, I really did enjoy math and science, but I loved storytelling more than that. So I went into journalism, and I realized that the only stories that I really wanted to report on were the science and space ones. Yeah. And as I was moving forward in my career, I was like, I wonder if anybody will actually pay me just to write about space full time. And I've managed to find that. So I feel pretty special.
I mean, yeah, that sounds absolutely ideal. Did you study science at school, or were you really that kind of creative journalistic type?
Yeah, no, I really focused more on, I did packages. So I would film and edit and report all of my own stories. And I took a few, like science classes here and there, but really wasn't a main focus of college. It wasn't until I started working on science stories full time that I kind of invested myself in learning more about science and astronomy and space science.
Do your parents help out with all that? Do they?
No.
Do they approve?
I try. I don't really communicate with them. I mean, they definitely love that I do what I do, and I love to send them my stories once they're up. But yeah, I don't really communicate with them when I'm working on a story.
What's the big thing that you're on at the moment?
Actually, I feel like things are kind of slowing down. I think I might look more into Space Force, since that's a big topic of conversation right now. And I think there's some more analysis that can be done there. But yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy week because we just launched the Parker Solar Probe, and then I quickly ran to Los Angeles to go check out SpaceX for a tour. And so now things have kind of subsided. It was a crazy couple of weeks there for a little while.
It has been a crazy week. I mean, I absolutely love the Parker Solar Probe mission. And I've just looking at your story about going over to SpaceX, I have to say your picture with Gwynne Shotwell in the background, I think that's an absolutely fantastic picture. She looks like the cat that got the cream. It's a brilliant picture. I was looking
when we were editing the photos, I was like, wow, this is better than I thought I could ever get. But yeah, it was an amazing photo, and they make it easy. Their stuff, SpaceX is all about aesthetics, taking pictures of their hardware. It makes the job easier for me because it's really pretty to look at. So, but I'm glad I did get some good photos of the astronauts and Gwynne as well.
Yeah. So what was the best part of that trip? It must have been a pretty exciting one.
So I was really taken with the test capsule. They have basically an entire mock-up of the Dragon capsule that they'll be using to send passengers to space. It basically recreates the entire interior, and they'll run simulations inside this capsule to, go through normal scenarios to dire emergencies to see if the astronauts can handle it, if they can communicate well with ground control. And that runs everything from, like fire to depressurization events. So I thought that was really cool. There's a little tidbit how they even simulate the sun rising with a lamp, so they really think of all the different ways that they can recreate the launch experience with this capsule. They don't shake it. It doesn't have like the vibrational simulation but they did say that they will shake the astronauts on a vibrational plate, like the way that they shake spacecraft, to make sure that they can handle the intense, forces of going to.
How long have the 4 astronauts been actually training in that particular environment, or have they only just started training? How long has this been going on for?
Yeah, they only started training a couple months ago, and it sounds like now that the crews have been chosen, they're going to ramp up those efforts as they get closer. But it seems to me that there are 2 big flights coming up, right? It's the first crewed test flight, which is only going to be a couple of weeks, and then the second one will be the operational flight, which will be a full mission to the International Space Station for months, where they stay for months at a time. And so those are very different types of missions, so they'll be training in different ways. So the first crewed pilot, or the crewed test flight pilots, they'll really only be training at SpaceX with their simulation hardware there, whereas the operational crew members, they're going to have to train at both NASA for their time spending on the International Space Station, and then they'll also train at SpaceX to get a feel for what it's going to be like to launch on the capsule.
Did you get to meet the astronauts? What were they like?
I mean, astronauts are always very charming. I love meeting. I didn't really get to spend too much time one-on-one with them. I have met Victor Glover before, who will be on the first operational flight. And he's just really cool. And they all just are so easygoing. They have such great quotes, So astronauts just are the coolest people, and they're just so fun to talk to, and they're just very charming. And I'll always jump in a chance to meet an astronaut.
Agreed. I have to say, Victor Glover seems like he's possibly the coolest astronaut ever, and he gets to wear the SpaceX spacesuit as well. They're
all going to look very good and very cool. So their coolness, they're already really suave right now, but they're going to, ratchet it up to 11.
It's really exciting, isn't it? Talking of exciting, in terms of, because it has been an absolutely epic year, hasn't it? 2018, and of course you got to. I saw your interview with Elon Musk at the Falcon Heavy launch. What was that like?
Oh man, that was amazing. That whole, was it a weekend? I can't quite remember when, but it was over the weekend and the first part of the week. That was just a whirlwind adventure because there was so much going on. So we would go see the rocket up close, and then we had a whole day of waiting for the launch to happen because it kept getting pushed back and back and back. And then of course, getting to interview Elon in front of the Falcon Heavy was just really great and amazing. And he was in such a good mood because, I think he knew things were going to go well, but, can't say that, but he was definitely very jubilant and happy. So it really just put everybody in a good mood while we were out there. I don't think anyone really expected it to blow up, but even if it did, we were all kind of having a really good time. It was a really great launch experience.
Yeah, I'm extremely jealous about that one. When you're in London, it's a bit of a gamble to have transatlantic flights for something that may or may not happen. So we gambled the wrong way, unfortunately.
I know so many people who did make long trips for that, and I remember there was one of the sources that I'd been talking to. I told him I couldn't do an interview because I was going to do this Falcon Heavy launch, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to that." And then he messaged me. He's like, "Anytime that I travel for a launch, it always happens on time, so it should work." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I hope that actually happens because I don't want to keep delaying my flight."
So, what other things have really excited you this year?
I got to go see InSight launch, which was hilarious. Well, the best part about InSight was that I got to ride with the spacecraft with the Air Force when they transported it from Colorado to California. So that was a really cool experience, and I've never gotten to do anything like that before. So then it was really special when I got to go out to California again to watch it launch. But the funny thing was, I've been to a number of launches and they're all amazing, but this one was in California at night. So the cloud layer or the marine layer from the ocean had come through. couldn't see it at all. It was like 4 a.m. too, so we were all a bit cranky, and then you didn't see the launch at all.
It's quite funny. I spoke to Jake, who does the We Martians podcast, and he was there as well and had exactly the same experience. So I'm very glad I didn't travel to that launch.
You should watch the video we did from that, because I'm just standing there in the dark laughing hysterically because it's just too funny how little we saw.
The pictures that I saw from people in aircraft above that were absolutely stunning, though. Did you see those?
Oh yeah, no, we should have flown. That would have been a great shot.
I know. That's something that I do really want to do, is do the flying over a launch. That really does look spectacular.
Find out how you can do that and tell me, because I want to do that as well.
What's coming up, do you think, in space flight this year, or maybe in the next couple of years, that you're really stoked about?
I think a lot of it is being loaded up towards the end of the year. So we've got the new target dates for commercial crew. Those are always tentative because they keep moving, but the latest ones are, uncrewed test flights later this year or early next of SpaceX and Boeing, followed by crewed tests next year, mid-year. I'm hoping that would be really great if those flights could get off the ground. I believe the next Falcon Heavy launch is currently no earlier than November as well. So if that gets off the ground, that'd be great to go. I think for that one, though, we'll see if work lets me, but I'd love to just go and not cover it, because it's always so stressful to cover these launches, and I just want to go and kind of experience it, maybe bring some loved ones with me who've never seen a launch before, because that is just a cool experience. So that I'm looking forward to. And then at the end of the year, we have the New Horizons flyby of the Kuiper Belt object that it's headed towards. So that'll be a great way to round out the year and ring in the new year, because it's happening on New Year's Day.
That's definitely one that I'm really looking forward to, particularly now it's a binary that they think. So yeah, that's going to be really cool. Yeah,
as soon as they saw it was weirdly shaped, or maybe it's even two, in one, like that, that's going to be really neat to see what it looks like.
Has there been any kind of real big disappointments for this year? I think that because one of the things I am really excited, and I think if you're an American, it must be really exciting that those crew announcements that you had at NASA a few weeks ago, and obviously your trip to SpaceX, and it all seems to be happening again. Is there any side to space in 2018 that's been a little bit of a downer?
Yeah, I think definitely all the news surrounding the James Webb Space Telescope. And also, it's exciting to go and talk about commercial crew, but we've also been waiting for commercial crew for a while. So that getting delayed was also a downer as well. So anytime there are big delays, those are a bummer for me. It's not what I like to report on. I know it's the nature of this business. Building spacecraft takes a lot of time and money, and especially with James Webb, when it's something that we've just never done before. I get that these things, human errors make longer and longer and more expensive delays. So that's been a tough thing to cover, especially with James Webb, because we thought it was going to launch next year, and then it was like a gut punch. It's, oh no, actually 3 years away. So that one was tough to cover.
Yeah, it's same with SLS, and there's a few other things, isn't there? Just always just a little bit over the horizon for everyone.
I guess I always assume that SLS is going to keep getting delayed. I guess I should have assumed that with James Webb as well. But yeah, delays are just a big part of the game, and I get it, but they'll never stop bumming me out.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I think is one of these stories that I think's been creeping up is this proliferation of small launchers. How do you see the small launch market, the Electrons and all these other companies that are entering that market? It's not happened yet, but everyone seems to be piling in. How do you see that going?
Yeah, I think we're right before the floodgates open on that. It's about, once things get into full swing, I really could see a very vibrant small satellite market, because we've got 3 major U.S. players coming online soon. You've got Rocket Lab, you've got Virgin Orbit, and you've got Vector. And, they are all set on doing nothing but launch small satellites. So, they're all very new. Rocket Lab is still trying to get its first commercial launch off the ground. But I think once they get into a rhythm, we're going to see these small satellites launching all the time, because it's such a big industry right now, and there's such a high demand for it. And especially, I think there's a lot of advantages to having a dedicated small launcher versus doing like a ride share, which is pretty much their only other option. So, or they also can deploy from the International Space Station as well. But when you have a dedicated small launch vehicle, you can pick and choose where you want to go. You don't have to, tag along for the ride. You're the reason for the ride. And so I think that's a very big benefit for a lot of these small satellite manufacturers.
Having a bespoke ride somewhere is great, but it does seem to be a lot more expensive when SpaceX charging $7,200 per kilogram, and the cheapest of all these small launches is $20,000. So there's a big price jump, isn't there, to have your dedicated launch? And I know obviously there's.
I think that's what you're paying for, right? And I think companies will pay a little extra to have that extra service. You know what I mean? I think somebody made a good comparison. It's like, do you do an Uber Pool, or, do you have an Uber X? You pay a little more for the extra service because it's all about you, and you don't have to worry about other people that are also going to space. So I understand there is a bit of a price jump, but I think it's like, paying for premium service. And I think a lot of satellite manufacturers will be interested in that.
Yeah. Do you think that small satellite market's going to be big enough? As in, it seems that if there's all these different companies, there's going to be a bit of carnage at the end when the dust starts settling down, as far as I can see. Or do you think these mega constellations are going to be the sticky plaster that stops that from happening?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that I've talked with a few of these companies, and they seem very eager to have small launchers like this. Also, remember that, small satellites don't have as long of a lifetime in space as larger satellites do. So they need to be replenished much more frequently than these bigger satellites. So I think, I don't think we'll ever really run out of small satellites to launch. But we'll see. It's possible we get to a place where, no one really needs a ride anymore. But I think that's quite a ways away.
Yeah. Have you been following? Because obviously we're very excited in the UK at the moment, because it looks like almost certainly space flight is going to return to the UK for the first time since 1971. We're the only people to abandon a space program. Have you been following the small launch in the UK at all?
Yeah, definitely. And that's great. I think that's awesome. And there's always a lot of focus on the US, but it's really great when, we expand and work with international partners. And I think, I think that would be a great opportunity for people in the UK to actually see a rocket launch and not have to travel overseas.
No, absolutely. It's quite, because it will, if the Virgin Galactic flies out of Britain in 2020 is when they're saying it will be the first launch from Europe, full stop. So it's quite phenomenal, isn't it? Yeah.
Is it Virgin Galactic or Virgin Orbit?
Sorry, Virgin Orbit. Yeah, sorry, Virgin Orbit. Yeah, sorry, Virgin Orbit. Yeah.
So I think that's going to be really cool, and that's the great thing about the Virgin architecture is that they really can launch from anywhere with ease. What Will Pomerantz was telling me, that one of the VPs over there, is that all they need are like a couple of trucks, and that's their launch pad, right? Like they just need to fuel up and go. Whereas with a lot of vertical launch vehicles, they have to have an entire infrastructure built. You can't just change launch pads willy-nilly, So that's what's really exciting about these air launch endeavors, is that it seems a bit more mobile than other launchers.
a couple of quick questions. Have you got any kind of recommendations for great films or great books or great programs that you've seen that really you go, oh, that's one of the best things? And it doesn't even have to be about space, but what's your kind of favorite?
I was going to say, well, I've really been getting into The Expanse lately, so that was kind of my obsession for a while, and that's a good sci-fi show I think everyone should check out.
Yeah, I got into The Expanse, but in Britain you can't get season 3. It's the most frustrating thing.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, so I'm stuck. So I've got to the end of season 2, and it's so annoying.
And you gotta wait. You know when it's going to come?
No, I keep going on the internet, and there's absolutely no word. It's like, yeah, you just have to sit and wait. It's pretty frustrating. But yeah, I agree. The Expanse was good fun. It was good fun.
Yeah, and then I also recently started The Americans, which was a mistake because it's so long and I'm so hooked. So it's a lot of content to get through.
Do you know what? That's brilliant because Jake and Anthony had me on Off Nominal, and my recommendation was The Americans. How about that?
It's good, right?
It's really brilliant. It gets a bit weird. It gets a little bit lost in the middle, a bit like a lot of these ones that run for a long time. But the last season's great. It's really good. So hang on in.
So we've got a ways to go.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it in the end. So before I let you go, we have a space playlist where we've got lots and lots of different songs. Is there a space song or anything, in fact, that what's in terms of music that you listen to that you really associate with space?
Twilight by the Electric Light Orchestra. Do you know that song?
I must do. I must do. I've even worked at ELO.
Right here, hold on. Can we play a song? Will we get in trouble?
No. Play me a little bit. That'd be quite fun.
It's very fun.
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, awesome. Do you know what? That's not in the playlist, so it's going in. It's going in. Oh, yes, get in. We got fantastic
to add my own contribution.
You really are one of our go-to space journalists when we're compiling the show. It's what I really like is that it's what you do is very different to what pretty much everyone else does because it has a kind of certain fun vibe to it.
Yeah, it's easy to get very technical about this stuff, so I try to think not a space journalist when I'm writing stuff. And it's hard because as I've been covering it, it's easy to fall into those jargony phrases. But I try to kind of steer away from that.
Did we? I don't think we talked about your rocket craft show, did we?
Spacecraft. No, we didn't.
Spacecraft.
Yeah. So we are in the midst of season 2 right now. We're going to be publishing more episodes throughout the next month and September. So, and it's all about living off planet. So I think that, I'm really excited to show. I think the first one we've already put up is about high seas, the Mars Analogs Habitat in Hawaii, where people do simulated Mars missions. And so we've got some good content coming up soon. I really think everyone will enjoy it.
Well, I certainly should be watching it. I watched the last season. It was great fun and really informative. Like everything you do. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. Flattery will get you everything.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
So well, thanks for having
me. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night.
So, how ace was that?
She's just incredible.
I do really, really like Loren Grush's journalism. It's much more personal than most of the others.
Totally. Nothing is boring, and she's a great interviewee. Loved it.
Yeah, I really loved it. Do you like the fact that she chose the same choice as me, The Americans, as I chose on Off Nominal?
And I check you out, peas in a pod.
I know. And she chose a Birmingham lookalike as her space song of the space song that entered straight into our space song list.
I think she must be a distant relative, Matt.
Yeah, huge call. Word up, Loren Grush.
Word up.
Well, let's finish on our space fact, which is another one that George told me about.
Hit me.
It's not really a space fact. It's about rockets, kind of. So
okay. So we started on a downer. We're going to end on one, aren't we?
Yeah. This is slightly more peculiar as a downer. The Chinese apparently fire rockets into clouds to stop hailstorms and stuff like that. That's what this was all about. So there was a Chinese man who'd been at a wake at someone's house when that roof of the house was blown off and he was killed. And everyone just assumed, there was a thunderstorm around at the time, so it was obviously just lightning. So they sent him to the crematorium. And when they were burning his body, it blew the crematorium up. And the reason being was these rockets that they fly into the clouds, one of them had come down, hadn't exploded, had gone through the roof like a bullet and lodged inside this poor man, killing him.
Oh my God.
And then blew up when obviously he was being cremated.
Wait, hang on a minute. When you say it blew up the crematorium, I assume you don't mean anyone else was injured.
Do you know, well, weirdly,
I assume it just kind of blew up and they went, what was that?
The story that George told me was it blew the doors off the crematorium and killed the man in charge, the person who was cremating him. I can't find that. I can't verify that in the stories I've read online. I haven't tried particularly hard.
Well, if anyone knows any more info, can we please get some more? Because this is fascinating. I mean, very morbid, and very sorry for the man and the man who was at the crematorium. But blimey, that's a pretty rare death.
It's unbelievably rare death, But what was weird, George also said that the man at the crematorium should have found this rocket buried inside this man, but was too busy stealing the man's teeth.
What?
So, I can't verify that. So, I'm going to go with that's
all
a bit
too
of an
much.
urban myth. So, anyway.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Please, just want to say, head over to iTunes. If you want to leave us a nice review, then go ahead. Who am I to stop you? But, Matt, I just want, more importantly than that, I want everyone to have a great weekend. Stay safe. Eat some chips.
Spod cats.
Have a beer. And chill out. Because we're just made of stardust, aren't we, Matt? So just chill out. Don't worry about anything.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
You might get hit by a weather satellite. So just have
God.
fun.
I've never even heard of weather rockets, let alone ones that come down and blow you up.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, Spod cats. Been a pleasure. Bye.
See you.